On behalf of the Motorcycle Industry Council's Board of Directors and staff, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the first monthly symposium webinar. I'm Paul Vetrano with Polaris and Indian Motorcycle, and I have the honor of serving as the chair of the MIC board. In March, when we first encouraged you to ride it out, I urged the industry to do everything we could to safely serve our customers through uncertain times, and you responded. Continuing to provide service and maintenance when dealership sales operations were prohibited, leveraging e-commerce for parts and accessory sales, producing digital content and conducting virtual events, rolling out innovative vehicle home delivery programs, and adapting to a contact-limited in-store retail experience. We did right by our customers, and now demand for our products appears to be strong. I also told you that the MIC would continue to work with government to ensure the powersports industry was part of the policy discussion, and will continue to communicate with the industry as the situation evolved. I could not be more proud of the way the MIC staff has stepped up through this challenging time. They were among the first associations in the nation to publish a COVID-19 resources webpage for the entire industry. They tracked and shared in real time updates on state closure orders and more recently, reopening orders. They analyzed and shared details about the CARES Act and the Paycheck Protection Program, providing resources for dealers and a webinar for aftermarket companies. And remarkably, they succeeded in having the powersports vehicle-related workers added to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency's Essential Infrastructure Guidance. All the while, MIC staff kept the membership and the entire industry up to date with frequent and high-quality communications. Although the COVID-19 pandemic is far from over, and we may experience setbacks along the way, the industry now must change its mantra from ride it out to ride on. If we have learned anything over the past few months, it is that riding a motorcycle or an off-highway vehicle is the ultimate way to social distance, either individually or with family. And after being homebound, everyone appreciates the freedom and escape that can be had on 2, 3, or 4 wheels. Now we must not only capitalize on the desire and interest that we already have, but we also must share the experience with others and invite them to join in the fun. The MIC is excited to transform its annual symposium into a monthly virtual event. The theme of this first installment is Improvise, Adapt, Overcome.
That's a great message from Paul Vetrano, MIC's chairman of the board, and a really great way to kick off our first virtual industry gathering. Welcome everyone to the first episode of MIC Symposium Series. This one's entitled Improvise, Adapt, and Overcome. I'm Larry Little, and you'll hear from me throughout this episode as your host. Now, in addition to introducing presenters and generally keeping things moving, I'm going to ask each presenter questions you submit at the end of their presentations. So if you'd like to submit a question, you can do so in the question field in your participant control panel. It's probably on the right side of your screen. We're working to keep today's session to an hour, so we may not have time for every question, but staff will follow up with you afterwards. You can also continue the conversation on Twitter, tagging the MIC with the handle @followmic, and by using the hashtag, as Paul said, ride on. So to really get things moving, I'm happy to introduce Erik Pritchard, President and CEO of the MIC. Over to you, Erik.
Thank you, Larry, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the first episode of the MIC Symposium Series, Improvise, Adapt, Overcome. We hope all of you are staying safe and healthy. All of us are looking down the road, trying to predict what's coming. And looking ahead, we weren't sure we'd be able to hold our 22nd annual symposium this fall. There are just too many different ways for things to go sideways. And given the state of things, we didn't want to wait until November anyway. All of us need information now. So like all of you, we're adapting. And we're going to deliver the symposium online this year. Today's free, available to everyone. Future events will be member or ticket only. All of us are trying to grow our industry and deliver outstanding service to our customers while maintaining health and safety measures. That isn't easy, but there's some bright spots. And part of today is about identifying those bright spots. Today is also about anticipating challenges and how we can improvise, adapt, and overcome them in order to come out stronger and better. For today's inaugural event, you're going to hear from MIC staff. First, you'll hear from Scott Schlegel in our Government Relations Office, who will update you on government activities to date. And then he'll cover some things we can expect to see in the coming months. Then you'll hear from Cinnamon Kearns, who leads MIC's AIM Expo trade show, and she will update you on some exciting changes there. And then I'll return with a report on the overall state of the industry. And as Larry mentioned, after each speaker finishes, there'll be a short question and answer period, and you can submit your questions through the webinar chat tool, and we'll answer as many as we can in the time permitted. Now, next month, on June 25 at 10 a.m. Pacific, Alex Trosofsky of ITR Economics will be our featured speaker. If you attended the symposium in November in Long Beach, then you'll recall his insights and humor, as well as his predictions for the next 10 years. You should anticipate a macroeconomic view of what's happened and what's to come. And I'm also curious to see if his views have changed about the next 10 years since last fall. And in the following month, on July 23 at 10 a.m. Pacific, David Savlowitz, CEO and founder of Competitive Analytics, will join us. David is a familiar face, and he will provide economic analysis and power sports industry specifics. David and his team crunched a lot of data. You'll recall the dynamic tool he uses to demonstrate the effects of various assumptions and inputs at past symposia. In July, he'll have close to an hour, which assuredly will reveal some valuable insights. In the coming months, we will roll out additional events. We hope you will join us again. We will send in email invitations to members, and you can also visit micsymposium.com for more information. So with that, Larry, I'd ask you to please introduce our first speaker.
Thanks, Erik. I know I speak for everyone when I say we're very much looking forward to hear what you have to say about the state of the industry. It's an interesting time for all of us, for sure. But now I'd like to introduce Scott Schlegel. He heads up the Government Relations Office in Washington, D.C. Scott and his team oversee government affairs at both the federal and the state level. And with the wide-ranging impact of the coronavirus, Scott and his team have been extraordinarily busy on behalf of the industry. So without further ado, let's turn it over to Scott and hear how he and his team are adapting and delivering for MIC members. Scott?
Great. Well, thanks, Larry, for that introduction. I greatly appreciate it. And, you know, I've had the pleasure over the last year and a half of running the Government Relations Office for the MIC. And while I might be new to the industry, I'm certainly not new to the sport. I've been riding motorcycles and ATVs for 45 years. And also not new to government relations, where I've been doing that for 30 years, including 14 years as a chief of staff on the Hill and serving as a presidential appointee for 7 years in 2 administrations. So I'm very honored to be running the Government Relations Office here at MIC. Government relations, by its nature, is a constantly evolving and adapting to challenging political environment. And the MIC Government Relations Office represents our members and their interests in Washington, D.C. and in the 50 states, as you heard. In D.C., we meet frequently with folks in the House of Representatives and the Senate, and as well as the White House. And we work with cabinet agencies like the Department of Transportation, the Park Service, the Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, the EPA, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission. We also work with coalitions to leverage our scarce resources and amplify key messages. And the Government Relations Office produces monthly state legislative summaries and quarterly federal legislative summaries, as well as Federal Register Action Notices called FRANs regarding regulatory proposals that you need to know about in our industry. And we generate scores of reports as well, ranging from electric vehicle incentives to state sound level restrictions, sales hang tag requirements, and a comprehensive list of motorcycle laws across all 50 states. Like you, we've had to adapt and change to the way that business is done since the COVID-19 corona pandemic outbreak. We spent several months pulling together a fantastic fly-in for y'all and had a great lineup there, and that ended up having to be canceled in March, unfortunately. So that means that our big annual visibility effort is gone. It means that the motorcycle caucus members and key bill sponsors and staff are not hearing from you, their constituents who generate the local jobs and sales revenues in their district. And it means that you missed out on a great industry networking opportunity with our senior executives from the industry. So we've had to change and improvise, right? So the lobbying efforts have changed, and the lobbying rules have changed. Typically, we're on the Hill multiple times each week, meeting with members of staff and or members of Congress and their staff. That's now prohibited. So we've had to overcome that hurdle and change the way that we do business. This makes personal relationships that we've developed with those member offices over the past years all the more important during this difficult time. So we've adapted by going to many, many conference calls and virtual everything, virtual meetings, a lot of Zoom meetings. We even do virtual fundraisers now. And I did one earlier this week, which reminds me that the MIC also has a PAC that is funded with member contributions that we help to support our industry champions. The Government Relations Office is also all about helping you, our members. So especially in this time of uncertainty, we welcome your help in arming us with information about your business. We learn about a lot of the members who are on our board and those who come to our fly-in just because we are interacting with them a lot. But we want to know the key information about your business as well, so that we can be better informed when working the Hill and state legislation. So what is it that you do or create? Perhaps you're an original equipment manufacturer or a dealership. If you're a dealership, how many dealerships do you have? And what brands do you sell there? Are you an importer or a distributor? Perhaps you're in the apparel business, in the safety equipment business, or an aftermarket parts and accessories. That's all information that's very helpful for us. And where are the locations of your facilities? So knowing where your locations are is extremely important, because when we go in to meet with members of Congress, we use that zip code to see whether or not you're located in their district. And it always helps to put a face with a name, or a local business with the name, as you're working issues on the Hill. We also want to know, what are the key issues for you? Perhaps it's trade and tariffs, or environmental regulations, access to public lands. Maybe the Consumer Product Safety Commission is your big issue, or Department of Transportation on-road regulations or safety equipment. And are you willing to participate in government relations office activities, either at the state level or the federal level? Are you willing to come to our fly-in and put a face with the company name and discuss the issues that are important to our industry? Do you engage now with your state or local or federal officials? And do you have good connections with them and know them? This is extremely important, because let's say that you know your local state representative or state delegate, and there happens to be a bill that's coming up before their committee that they chair. It'd be great for us to be able to call your delegate up and say to her, hey, look, this is a key piece of legislation and it involves our industry, and you know your business in the district that's going to be impacted by that. So this can actually reap rewards for your company and our industry as a whole. So let me give you an example of that. Judd Hollyfield of Reinhardt Racing down in South Carolina, they make these great aftermarket slip-on exhaust pipes, largely for Harley Davidsons. He comes to a number of our fly-ins. He's been to our fly-ins in the past. And last year he was at our fly-in out here in Washington, D.C. He had a chance to meet with his member of Congress, Congressman Mark Meadows from South Carolina. And they had a great discussion in the office. In fact, Congressman Meadows even said, oh, you should come out and go hunting with me sometime on my camp, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Judd came out of that meeting obviously feeling pretty good about the meeting that he had had, but also realizing that, you know, members of Congress say things and don't always follow up on it. Lo and behold, in August of last year, Judd got a call from the congressman's office saying, hey, Congressman Meadows would like to come to your facility and do a tour and see what it is that you're making and talk to the folks that you employ. So you see in the picture there in front of you, Congressman Meadows at the microphone and Judd Hollyfield's over on the right-hand side. Some of his workers were off to the left, as well as additional press that were there. It was a great event. The Congressman, Judd, got a chance to talk to him about tariffs and how they're impacting his business. Even though it's 100% American-made product, American steel, American aluminum that he's using, American labor, he's still seen a 30% increase in his cost of materials, and he's also seen a significant delay in his supply chain in terms of those materials arriving there. An unintended consequence of the China tariffs that he was able to inform Congressman Meadows about. So it was a great event. He had television and newspapers there as part of the press. Benefited all parties involved, and actually now Mr. Meadows is the White House Chief of Staff for President Trump, and so it's great to have that connection where he now knows about key trade issues for our industry and the aftermarket industry issues as he's working there in the White House. So I've talked a little bit about the changes and adapting that we've had to do, but let me take a minute to highlight some of the 2020 wins that we've had for our membership. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, we immediately deployed online resources for our members, as you heard from Paul in his opening remarks. We established a one-stop shop on our website for the resources available to our members. We developed an interactive map to outline state closures that were going on, and now that outlines state reopenings that are going on. All you have to do is click on that state and you'll see what the status of it is. We also developed another interactive map to track the off-road trail closures. And we put on a webinar to break down the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP. That was the nearly $3 trillion bill that passed, along with the small business aid that was in there. And we did our webinar to talk about applications and resources for the affected businesses. Another thing we did was we got the Department of Homeland Security to change their CISA guidelines to include Powersports employees as essential workers. Now, you may know that the CISA guidelines are the guidelines that are used by roughly 38 of the states out there to determine who the essential employees are. And initially, our Powersports employees were not captured in that. We did multiple calls as well as multiple correspondence and letters. And finally, they changed that to include our Powersports workers as well. A big win for the industry. We also secured a tariff rollback on helmets coming in from China because there are no domestic manufacturers of motorcycle helmets right now. So, and it makes no sense whatsoever to put additional tariffs, which are taxes, on helmets, which are safety gear for our folks in our industry. And that work actually began last June and came to fruition just this month. So there's a lot of spade work that goes on as we're doing work from that. And you can see in the picture here, Paul Vitrano is over on the left, the chairman of our board, and next to me on the right side there is Doug Hill from AFX Helmets. Great to have his testimony that he gave in front of the USITC, the International Trade Commission, and the USTR. There's no question in my mind that that made a huge difference in their deciding to go ahead and waive the additional tariffs that they were putting onto helmets. And lastly, we defeated 2 attempts to impose up to 100% tariffs on European motorcycles, parts, and accessories. So twice there have been proposals by the U.S. Trade Representative to impose these tariffs. We organized members to come in and testify again in front of the ITC and USTR. And we had John Hines from KTM, President of KTM, come in and do a lot of advocacy on the Hill as well for that. So looking ahead, what's next over the next 6 months? We have additional stimulus packages that will be coming up in the coming weeks or possibly months, as well as modifications to the PPP. In fact, today the House is going to be voting on those modifications. And when the Senate comes back, I assume that they'll take that up fairly quickly. Those are changes that will make it much more business friendly for the PPP. There's an infrastructure bill that's going to happen this summer as part of the stimulus as well. And then we have the 5-year highway bill. This is the transportation reauthorization, as we refer to it. That needs to be done by September 30th. We have HR 5797, the Recreational Trails Program, or RTP Full Funding Act. That also needs to be done by September 30th to increase funding for recreational trails across the country. And then, of course, you'll have continued tariff battles and the ramp up to the November elections that are coming up. So what will happen beyond 2020? The elections will certainly bring new faces and new priorities. We see that every election. There's the potential for change in the House as well as the Senate and the administration. We still may see some limitations with regard to COVID-19. If we see another upspike in the COVID-19 pandemic, that will present additional significant challenges to us, and it will present significant challenges to state legislatures in particular that front end load their activity. Many of them are January through March or April timeframe. That is their busy time. And so that'll put a pinch on us to try to track that legislation and be in contact with them if we're in a similar situation. So in summary, let me just say that we are here to serve you. You know, this is, you see here a picture of John Hines, the president of KTM North America. He's meeting with the Motorcycle Caucus co-chair Tim Walberg of Michigan to discuss our opposition to the European Union tariffs that they proposed. That meeting, as well as other meetings, resulted in the Motorcycle Caucus co-chairs sending a letter to the U.S. Trade Representative saying, please don't impose 100% tariffs on motorcycles, parts, and accessories from the EU. Very successful meeting. So as I said, we're here to serve you. Please reach out to us with any questions, share your information about your company, share how you're being impacted by government policies, and come to our 2020 fly-in once we get that scheduled. And let us know also if you're going to be in Washington at any other time during the year, because we're happy to, if you're going to be out here doing meetings with your congressman or with federal agencies, we're happy to help out. We'll host you at our offices in the DC area. We'll help you get meetings with your member of Congress or their staff, and we'll provide you with information on how to navigate the Hill. So with that, Larry, that's all I've got. I'm happy to answer any questions if you had some come in.
Thanks, Scott. It's really been nonstop for you guys. It's been obvious. And as I think Mr. Vetrano noted in his opening remarks, MIC was one of the first associations to actually get out to its members a continuous update. It wasn't just one update plunked on the website. It was continuous every day. And I know that I for one am very appreciative, not for the work that you're getting done, but making sure that all of us are informed about what's happening in Washington and at the state level. So let me look at some of the questions here and pluck a couple out here. You mentioned the recreational trails program as a priority for MIC this year. The questioner wants to know more about the program. They're not familiar with it, and just wondering if you could give us a little more info.
Sure, I probably should have expanded on that. 5797, the Recreational Trails Program, Full Funding Act. The RTP is a program that is across all 50 states, as well as the District of Columbia, provides funding for on-road and off-road trails. That funding is provided through the gas tax that we pay when we go to do off-road activities, and a portion of that gas tax then gets put into the RTP. It's estimated that we pay in roughly $300 million a year in gas tax for our off-road activities, but that RTP program is only funded at $85 million. So this bill is an effort to try to plus that up and get a bigger portion of the money that we already pay in gas taxes back for our recreational trails. And by law, 30% of the money in the RTP goes for motorized trail activity. Another 30% goes for non-motorized activity, and the remaining 40% goes for mixed use activity. So it really is a fantastic program. And we just want to get back more of the gas tax that we already pay in.
Yeah, as one who loves to ride trails, I wish you much success on that, because we certainly deserve to get our full share. Another question here. I'm almost actually afraid to ask this one. Where do you see the national elections heading in November?
That's a loaded question. And it's a good question. It's one that, I mean, we're 5 months out right now from the election. It is really difficult to say where things are going to go. What I can say is that there's a chance that the House could flip. There's a chance that maybe the Republicans would pick up enough seats to flip the House. I think that that's probably a little bit longer shot than the Senate maybe flipping Right now in the Senate, the Democrats are defending 12 seats, the Republicans are defending 22 seats. If you had asked me this question 3 months ago, the answer would be very different than it is today. There's no question that, in Maine, Colorado, Arizona, Georgia, those are all chances for the Democrats to flip seats. In Alabama, very solid chance for the Republicans to flip a seat there. Michigan and New Hampshire are a little bit longer shots. Coincidentally, our co-chairs of the Motorcycle Caucus in the Senate, one is Gary Peters from Michigan, he's up and he's in a swing seat. The other, Joni Ernst from Iowa, she's up and she's in a swing seat. So it'd be nice to try to keep as many of our Motorcycle Caucus members as we can. On the presidential side, I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I think that is a long, we will see what happens. And having done this for 30 years, I know that you don't feel good about an election until about 2 weeks out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it was a good question. Great answer. I think yours is a great question. You asked us to share more information about our companies and our political contacts. So how should we do that?
Yeah, definitely send an email either to our member services, which is memberservices@mic.org, memberservices@mic.org, or send it to me directly if you'd like. It's S. Schlegel, spelled SCHLOEGEL @mic.org. Probably easier to remember, member services at MIC, and they'll shoot it over to me.
Okay, we'll take one last one here. So when is the next Washington, D.C. fly-in, and what does someone have to do to attend?
Yeah, great question. All members of MIC are willing or are able to attend for free. There's no charge to them. We set up members meeting in your member of Congress's office, the House and Senate. We'll also provide additional programming of events that go on, including people from within the administration, industry thought leaders, that kind of stuff. And we provide a number of meals as part of that. So all you have to do is register, then you pay for your travel here and for a hotel for a couple of nights. The date of that has not yet been set. We have to wait until December when Congress sets their schedule for the year, because we want to make sure that they're in town on the week that we schedule our event. So stay tuned and you'll hear from us in December on when that is.
Perfect, great. I think that's about all the time we have for questions, but a lot of good questions, and there's several we didn't get to, and I know that your team will get to those and respond offline to people. So thanks so much, Scott. Thanks to your team and all that you're doing in Washington. It's great. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
All right, as we continue to discuss how we're adapting, which is a big thing, as we all know, Cinnamon Kearns, GM of AIM Expo and Vice President of MIC Events, is here to give us an update on AIM Expo 2021, and I think you have a lot to share with us today, Cin, so take it away.
Thanks, Larry. So for those of you that don't know me, I've been in the industry for over 20 years, and back in 2013, I had the privilege of launching AIM Expo. Over the years, we've definitely seen successes, but we've also had the opportunity to recognize ways to continue to grow and improve. Strategically, we knew that there had to be fundamental change to the direction of the show. And with all that's happened in the world recently, it became clear that now was the time to make that change. So last year, we launched the campaign, Together We Rise, but that was just the first step of changes to come. So for those of you that haven't heard, AIM Expo will be taking place in January of 2021. This change in timing allows us to kick off a pivotal year in 21, but also focus on recovery through the end of this year. When we come together in January in Columbus, this will be our chance to truly get together and build the future of power sports. Aligned with the right time of year for dealers and manufacturers and suppliers to place orders and to write orders, we know that Q1 is the preferred time of year for our industry. How do we know that? Because we've asked. When we asked dealers that attended the show how we could make it better, when we asked dealers that didn't come to the show what we could do to have them join us, the answer was unanimous: change the timing. So we know that January is the right time for brands to connect with their dealers and connect in one place at one time. So you'll also see that we have a new focus. We have always said that we are first and foremost a trade show and focused on the industry. As part of a trade-only event, you will be able to take advantage of 3 uninterrupted days to place and write orders. We'll have leaders from Powersports and business sharing their insights and their strategic vision for 2021. And we'll also have our education platform managed in conjunction with Powersports business. And we'll be able to talk about best practices and things that we've learned from this past year, what worked, what didn't work, and what we can do to take those success stories that we've heard and turn them into a trend, not just a one-time event. AM Expo will connect the right brands with the most engaged dealers. Our goal has remained constant, to provide an efficient platform for our industry to conduct its business in bringing the industry together and building the future of power sports. As part of this vision, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the value of key partners and what they bring to the show. Having said that, I couldn't be more excited to share the following video with you. This will be shared with the industry later on today as a press release, but right now you all have the exclusive first look at this news.
Needless to say, we've been going through some challenging times. Between the power sports market overall and COVID-19, this is an important time for us to work together to build a stronger power sports industry and to support our dealers across the country. In the spirit of Together We Rise, we're happy to announce a partnership between the AM Expo and Tucker Powersports. This partnership supports our industry's most important show and improves the experience of the dealers who attend. The show in January 2021 will now certainly be the top of every Tucker supplier's list and a must-see for every Tucker dealer. We hope our new relationship creates a stronger AIM show and a great experience for every attendee. Here's a look at what's ahead, and we look forward to seeing you in January 2021 in Columbus, Ohio.
So to Mark McAllister and the Tucker team, thank you so much for sharing that great news. We couldn't be more proud and more excited by this partnership, and I cannot wait to see all of you guys in Columbus. We are looking forward to doing great things in 21. This is your industry, this is your show. And so having said all that, I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. Larry, what do we got?
Well, let me just say that's fantastic news about Tucker. You know, as a member of the launch team alongside you back in 2013, I love the way that the show is heading in 2021, and I'm looking forward to be there. So I know there's going to be a lot of excitement about this news when we get out this afternoon. So we have a couple of questions. Let's just try and get through a few of them. I think one of the obvious questions with it becoming a trade show, someone asked, will OEMs have a presence at the show?
That's a great question, and the answer to that is absolutely. We've already talked to several OEs that have expressed their intention to be part of the show, because the reality is it's a great opportunity for OEs to not just connect with their dealers, but to really connect with the industry and talk about their vision and their strategy for the upcoming year.
Yeah, great answer. What about the V-twin segment? I think that's it. Someone asked that. I think that's been an ongoing question with AIM Expo over the years.
And that's a fair question. We know that the V-twin industry has always been very strong and very outspoken with the change in dates, with the change in focus. And, you know, honestly, with this partnership with Tucker, our hope is to grow not just the V-twin segment, but all segments, including four-wheel. I mean, it's about bringing the industry together.
Sure. I know that a lot of people have launched products in the past at AIM Expo, and someone does ask a good question. Is there still going to be a media hub for new product launches?
We will definitely have a focus on new product. I can't say what the media hub will look like. It may live on the show floor. It may be a new product tour with our exhibitors. I'm not sure. I think a lot of products that would traditionally have been launched in Q4 are going to be postponed to Q1. So there's tremendous opportunity there. And I think with OE participation, even though they normally launch their vehicles before the end of the year, it'll be a great opportunity for people to get first look and get their hands on new units in January of 21.
Good. And I think with the announcement of Tucker, this question, not surprised to see it, and I think it's a good question. Will you have other distributors at the show?
That is certainly the intent. Again, you know, AM Expo, we have always been about bringing the industry together. You know, as you heard Mark McAllister and the Tucker team say, as we have said for a long time, together we rise. We can't do this alone. And so long answer, longer. Yes, I hope we'll see other distributors there. I hope we'll see everybody there, quite frankly.
That's great. I think that's about all the time we have for questions, but I would say that this is the opportunity for the industry to really come together. So I'm very excited. I know everyone else will be too, to see what your team creates for AM Expo in 2021. Thanks so much, Sid.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you.
All right, now I'd like to welcome back Erik to the webinar for his State of the Industry. Over to you, Erik.
Thank you, Larry. And thank you, Scott and Cinnamon, not just for your participation today, but for your great work on behalf of the members and the entire powersports industry. When the reality of this pandemic became clear, many feared the worst. Some even predicted a complete collapse of our industry. Our hearts remain heavy for every family and business impacted by the double crisis of both the virus and the economic shutdowns. But these challenges fuel your MIC team to work hard to help every business in powersports. We believe there are good reasons for optimism, but optimism tempered by caution for everyone's health and safety, and recognizing that we are going to learn a lot more in the coming months. So let me talk a little bit about what we've been doing, what we've been seeing from the industry, and what we think can happen next. So I'll take you back. I took on this role, I stepped into the role November 1st of last year, so it's been about 7 months. And the first few months went pretty much according to plan. We reviewed all staff, reviewed all budgets, reviewed all priorities, developed objectives for 2020, and had a plan in place. And then naturally in March, everything got blown up and we had to reprioritize and focus on our work in different ways. Like you, we are facing new unanticipated challenges within the associations, but we also see tremendous opportunity, not just for the associations, but really the overall industry. And I'll walk you through some of that in the course of this discussion. But for all of us, we're going down a road we've never been down before. Each business is making adjustments on how to conduct business while implementing health and safety guidelines. Every employee is trying to figure out how to interact with customers and their colleagues, often from home, which is new for lots and lots of us. And there's really no clear indication of what normal will look like and when that'll be. So we're all doing things differently. We're all improvising. We're all adapting. And part of this discussion today is talk a little bit about some of those adaptations and then what we think what overcoming those challenges might look like. So to the good, one of the things that's come out of this, people working together. We've got renewed relationships within the association. So first, we've renewed our relationship, refreshed our relationship with the AMA. You may have seen the joint letter that I sent out with Rob Dingman, president of AMA, talking about next steps and encouraging people to get ready to ride and contacting their local dealers for help. You heard the news from Cinnamon about Tucker at AM Expo in 21. We see lots of positive stories from people in the industry doing very generous, kind things for lots of other people. Dealerships servicing first responders' vehicles, all kinds of donations. I can't say that's surprising. I mean, in this industry, I think none of us would be surprised, but it's encouraging and it just makes you feel good. It makes you feel good to be part of this industry and part of that kind of effort. So you've heard a little bit about how our work has been reset. You heard that the GR work has really been focused on COVID-19, both at the federal and state level. You heard that the show and the MIC events work has really been focused on transitioning the show to January of 21 and new partnerships and new ways of doing business. But those aren't the only areas where we've made changes. So our communications department has been essentially reset, and it's adapted to the current situation. And I won't read that list of things, you can read it yourself, but really the effort's been about getting more information out to you much faster. That's really required us to reallocate staff, reallocate resources, reprioritize the work. And the work itself, of course, has to speak for itself. And so it's not like the communications department hasn't been doing this work for you. I'm just not sure it was getting out to you enough or as quickly as it should be. And so while the work must speak for itself, you got to be aware of the work in the first place. So I'm pleased with the efforts there, pleased with the output, pleased with the coordination between GR and communications to keep you posted and updated on what's going on. And if you think back into late March, early April, things were very fluid, contradictory information coming out of federal and state governments, and they did a good job of communicating that and digesting that for all of us. The next effort that's been affected has been the ridership initiative. So unsurprisingly, some of that work has been paused as we've had to, one, respond to the crisis, and you've heard about this, GR and communications work and so forth, and sending resources there. But the other is we really had to reevaluate the timing of our messages. It would have been off note to talk about the sorts of things we talk about in terms of getting out and learning how to ride a motorcycle, or getting into motorcycling, getting back into motorcycling in the midst of all this bad news. As a result, we've postponed hiring the director of ridership, but I've talked to lots of folks who are interested and have very interesting ideas about how we might proceed with that effort. We were going to field test some of the tactics we've previously discussed in the spring, but due to stay-at-home orders, that had to be postponed, of course, and we'll revisit that throughout this year. So that's just created other opportunities for us to focus on other ridership initiative related work. So you can see there, but really what we're looking at next would be messaging as states are opening up, messaging the right message, the right tone, getting the right messages out to folks for the reasons, and I will get to why I think there's going to be a receptive audience for that message. The other work we've been really focused on is the portal. So part of making the portal work is that it be sustainable financially and not just be a website or a tool for a consumer to go and find out about motorcycles, but for it to work for dealers, for it to work for manufacturers and distributors and aftermarket, PG&A, you name it. We need it to work in lots of different ways. And so that work has continued. We had a tremendous meeting in New York at the beginning of March, right before everything went sideways. So we're building on that meeting, we're building on that effort and talking with potential partners who can help us really elevate that portal into something beyond a mere website. So that's how our work's been affected. And now I want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the industry. So I'm going to show you a chart here that shows 2020 retail sales of power sports vehicles, new retail sales, the first 4 months of the year, January, February, March, April. And the graph shows from 2016 to 2020. Now, as you know, we don't have every new retail sale. We don't capture every vehicle. But what you're looking at is an apples to apples comparison of the data. And if you look at it, you'll see that in the first 4 months of 2020, it's the second best performance, second only to 2016, in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of really high unemployment. So this is good news. And so if you feel like your company's been having a good sort of surprising first 4 months, you're not alone. If your dealership's had a pretty surprisingly good first 4 months, you're not alone. And you might think, oh, well, January and February were good and that's helped carry it. But we compared March of 19 against March 20. and March 20 is higher. We compared April 19 to April 20. April 20 is higher. And we don't have the numbers yet for May, but I can tell you what I've heard from you. Heard you guys are having a pretty good May. So we are looking at a sort of surprising outcome. I want you to think back to how you felt in the middle of March when things really started to feel like they were going sideways. The news is better than we would have anticipated. And I think that's true for anyone who's on this call. It's better than we expected, which is counterintuitive. Because if you've been around a while in this industry, one of the things you would say is, I think as a general observation, as unemployment goes up, sales go down. And yet that hasn't happened. Let's go to this next slide, and I want to talk about forecasting and beyond intuition. One of the benefits you get as a member of the MIC is the business advisory forecast. And as you know, a forecast basically models past relationships, right? It models what the correlations or connections were in the past and then draws on that to predict the future. The models would predict that our sales would go down. Now, you can't say right now they're not going to go down because it's way too soon. You can't draw a broad conclusion like that or a hard conclusion only 4 months or almost 5 months of the year. But we would have expected, based on the models, to see the sales go down. So what's going on here? I mean, there are only two, in my mind, basic explanations. The one would be the modeling is bad. But we know that's not the case because you've seen the models in the past and you know who works on them. It's David Savowitz and his team at Competitive Analytics. They know what they're doing and the tool they use is hyper sophisticated. So it's not them. They're competent. They know what they're doing. So then the other would be that past models don't really apply. To me, then the question would be, why is that? Why would the past model of, say, unemployment going up and sales going down no longer apply? I think this is a fundamental question we should all be asking ourselves. I put there a few questions for us to think about. Is there a fundamental change happening with consumers? Are they thinking about recreation and transportation differently? In other words, are they looking at things like, well, I can't play team sports, but I can engage in an individual activity that I can do with other people? And then, of course, is this a temporary blip or is it permanent? I suggest to you that the answer to that last question is up to us. We, the industry, get to answer if this is temporary or permanent. Let's talk a little bit more good news. So dealerships reporting record sales, all sorts of records being set, all good. For us, I'm pleased to report our membership remains very strong. And in fact, in the midst of all this craziness, we've added 24 new members, which, I mean, I'll just tell you, is very gratifying to the staff. It feels good that people have stuck with us and new people have joined us to be part of this shared effort on behalf of the powersports industry. So let's talk about the opportunity. And people have touched on it a little bit already. But let's go through these because these are worth talking about. People are tired of being indoors. I don't care who you are. Everybody's sick of being stuck indoors. Something to think about is risk being reassessed by people. And a person who might have thought before, well, I don't know about power sports, that could be dangerous, or I'm not sure. Well, does your thinking change when you could go outside and get sick and die from having been breathed on by the wrong person or touched the wrong surface? Does your thinking about risk change, and do you start thinking about, you know, there's some things I really want to do, and I've been stuck inside for the past few months. I'm probably going to be willing to go do some things, especially if the risk is something I can control or at least help control. For instance, by wearing protective gear, a helmet, gloves. We know, or at least I can't say I guess we know, we can anticipate people are not going to want to carpool or get on a subway or ride a bus. Are they going to want to ride a shared scooter where somebody else has been touching the grips and you know they weren't wearing gloves? Are they going to be looking for an alternative? Motorcycles certainly offer a much lower cost option than a car, and it's more fun. And if you now go back to the ridership work that we talked about a little bit ago, the initiative and where that work has gone, now we go and we draw on that research because it gives us the language and the path to welcoming these new riders. If we think there's an audience and an appetite from people who previously were not our customers, and I would submit that the January to April sales numbers at least suggest it. If that's what's happening, then we need to be prepared to welcome these new folks. And we need to use the tools that we've developed, separate from the pandemic, as you'll recall. I mean, we did this last year, but now we can really put it to work, and it's going to speed it up much faster. So when we think about what are actionable steps to take, I think there are a few actions. First, review the handbook, the ridership handbook with the language and the path. Get that in your mind so that you're prepared to deal with folks. Because you're going to be dealing, we anticipate, with unprepared customers. They're inspired not by anything we've done, they're inspired by the fact that the world around them has changed. And they're going to be looking to do some things differently, at least we believe. They've done some online researching, I guarantee it, because just like you've been spending a bunch of time on the internet looking at God knows what, as you think about, well, should I buy a boat someday? I mean, people are looking. So they're going to have a little bit of exploring under their belt, but they're going to need help. And that's where you come in, especially the dealers. Come in and help them explore further, engage, and then really integrate into power sports, beyond motorcycle, into power sports. The next action item is send us your success stories. We can turn them into news. We can use them in DC. We can take those successes and share them with the industry so that a tactic that is scalable can be used by lots of folks. Stay engaged with government relations for sure. You heard Scott and the importance of staying engaged with GR. We need that to continue. Please plan to join us at AIM Expo in January. That's going to be a crucial time for the industry to really come together, build on what could be a good year. Again, we can't assume too much and assume there are going to be some setbacks this year. I mean, I just think all of us should brace ourselves that we're not going to have record-setting months for the rest of the year. But we're in a very different, much more positive place than we ever thought we'd be, I think, just a few months ago. And then I want you to plan to attend the next symposium event. That's on June 25th. Now, finally, let's show you some staying connected tools so you can stay with us. These are the links you need. These are the platforms. Stay connected with us. Keep us informed with what you're doing and how we can help. And with that, Larry, I guess I'd ask if there's anybody who has any questions.
Yeah, we do have some questions, but I just want to say great job and thank you and all the MIC team for everything you've done to support the industry, especially these last few months. It's been crazy. And as I said before, those constant updates that Scott and his team were producing were invaluable as we tried to navigate. And based on the volume of questions that we're getting, there's a lot of interest and excitement. So I'm going to cherry pick a few of these and hopefully they'll kind of relate to what most of the questions people brought in. So one of the ones was, you used the word power sports, and I know I've gotten asked this question a lot in the past. Use power sports and not just motorcycles, and can you just kind of explain generically why that is?
Sure. So in my mind, and I think in the mind of the associations and most folks in the industry, it makes sense to tie them all together. Motorcycles, ATVs, side-by-sides, these are all in the dealerships, and it goes all the way up the chain, right? They're important. All three are important to the manufacturers and the distributors, aftermarket, PG&A, retailers, dealers, you name it. It's certainly part of AIM Expo, where we really try to bring all this together, in part because the customer for a motorcycle is likely a customer for an ATV or a side-by-side, and vice versa. There's lots of overlap. And given the importance of these vehicles to consumers, and especially at the dealer level in terms of just sales and activity. It just, in my mind, it makes sense to think about all of them together. And MIC itself is organized in such a way that it includes motorcycles, ATVs, and side-by-side. So, I use it not to favor or disfavor anyone, but rather to be inclusive and bring everyone together.
Yeah, a good answer. And speaking of MIC, and I know things have been different for everyone's business as we've gone through this, but what are some of the changes the question is, what are some changes at the MIC and other associations that we have that you think will become permanent?
So what I've told our staff is that the things we're doing now to respond to this crisis, the things that are smart, the things that are working, they're going to stick. So I would anticipate and expect that communications to remain a focus, that there would be a lot of communication with the industry about what's going on. I would expect GR to remain a priority and really funneling that information from GR through communications. And then the ridership initiative, as that develops and grows, we'll expect to see that really become a major part of the communications channel as well. Internally, I would expect to see we'll have people working from home and using phone and video for quite some time. I think when you look at, especially for the coming months, parents can't send their kids to camp. There's no summer school. We're going to have a childcare problem. And so one of the things we want to do is help smooth that out for parents who work for us. And if they've demonstrated that they can do their job well from home, then I want to encourage that and allow that to happen. And if a person can't do it from home, well, then we need to have a conversation about that. But I think that's going to be something that's going to be a reality for us. And we'll need to be thinking about how to use our office space differently. And I expect that will lead to some new efforts coming out of the MIC and the associations in general that'll be valuable to the members.
Good answer. Good answer. This is a good question because it's something that both you and I have worked on in the past year, is ridership. And the question is there overlap between the work we've done on ridership and the industry's overall response to the crisis?
Yeah, I think that's the fundamental question. I touched on it a little bit, but let me reiterate and make the point as clear as I can, because that matters. So we did that research into ridership and why a person would become a rider. And part of it was in the inspiration piece. How do you get someone interested in the first instance to look into power sports? And it really was focused on motorcycles, but I think you can draw a lot of those same lessons and apply to ATVs and side-by-sides. But first is the inspiration piece. But here, the inspiration piece might be taken care of for us by the circumstances around us. So then we need to take whatever interest there might be and bring them along that path, that journey to becoming a rider. And so we use the work from the ridership research and apply it to these potential new customers who are going to be interested in what we're doing. And they're not going to know the brands that well. They're not going to know the differences between the products that well. And so we're going to have to help bring them along, and we're going to have to help educate them. But that's part of what we've been talking about in ridership, which is meeting the customer where they are. Right. And so I think we've got a unique opportunity to bring in a lot of new folks who might otherwise not have been interested in power sports.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great opportunity for ridership. There's quite a few more questions, but I know we wanted to try and stick to our hour. So staff will definitely get back to the folks with their questions if they weren't answered in some manner. But I'd like to turn it over to you so we can close it out and hit this right on our hour mark. So take it away, Erik.
Thanks, Larry, and thanks everyone for joining us, and thanks for sending your thoughtful questions. If we didn't get to your question, feel free to contact me directly. So a closing thought, when the world shifts under our feet, as it has, there's really nothing else to do but improvise, adapt, and overcome. Unless you decide to pull the blankets up over your head and give up. But that's not us, right? You're here, part of not just part of today, but having gotten through the past few months, you're here because you have grit. And grit is fundamental to character, and character is what carries us through difficult times. We have an opportunity to be better. Whether it's on a personal or organizational level, this is an opportunity to reset and improve. At the industry level, our combined efforts to increase ridership are essential. We must welcome a lot of new folks to Powersports, and it's likely to be people who don't know much about us or what we have to sell, but we must welcome them with kindness and patience, not just for our business, but we can be part of the solution to this crisis. This is not the end for our industry, it's the beginning. Thanks for coming today. We hope you can join us for future episodes. The next one is on June 25th, and you can learn more at micsymposium.com. We look forward to seeing you next month.